It's such a difficult topic, and one of the subjects that we haven't broached in the global discussion is the difference between the college game and the pro game and the nature of what these players are representing at each levels. You're much more of an individual in the NFL than you are in college. And that's the lens through which Dabo is speaking about this. So I agree with almost everything that he's talking about. In the college level, if a player decided to do this, I think it would bring unwarranted attention to players that possibly aren't ready for this at 18 years old, aren't ready for that discussion, aren't ready for a camera in their face being asked a question of this magnitude. So as an individual, you have to understand that as a college athlete, even if you're ready to have that discussion, versus an NFL athlete, which is almost an independent contractor at times with a non-guaranteed contract, with the ability to get traded at any given moment. So that's the lens with which Dabo is looking at this through. And then as it relates to what he said about the nature of the protest and the divisiveness, that again is shaped by our lens, right? Your background is going to shape how you view it. Skip, your background is going to shape how you view it. And Joy, my background is certainly going to shape how I view what Colin Kaepernick has done. My background happens to be that I'm the son of a veteran. My dad fought in Vietnam as a Marine. And I'm incredibly proud of that fact, and I'm proud of him. So when I first saw what Kaepernick was doing, I was immediately frustrated and felt like it was a disrespectful gesture towards my father. So it was personal for me. When I looked at what Seattle did, I immediately was proud of what Seattle did. And I thought, now that's a positive way to start a conversation and to get this conversation started on the table. So the divisiveness of an individual in Kaepernick, yes, was frustrating for me personally. Whereas the hopefulness of what I saw Seattle doing, standing arm in arm, starting a discussion between everybody, was somewhere where I was hopeful and positive about what could happen
By the way,
going forward.
quick thought. Your father's also a coach, or was?
He was, yes.
So now you're viewing it through that prism also. That when Dabo speaks as the coach of a team, you're thinking, my father might have viewed it that way also,
That's right.
right?
Had Colin Kaepernick protest not taken place and the Seattle Seahawks walked out there arm in arm, what would you have thought?
I think that would have been a positive
No,
starting point.
you don't know you don't have the luxury of knowing what Colin Kaepernick had done.
Understandable. I would have thought that the togetherness aspect, the team aspect, everybody from every walk of life on that team, every background, every lens like we've been talking about here, walking together as one would have been a statement and a flag in the ground that would have said, we're ready to tackle an issue together.
But you don't, but see, here's the thing. You know what Colin Kaepernick had done. I ask you, you don't know what Colin Kaepernick had done. The Seattle Seahawks walk out arm in arm. What are you thinking?
And he also doesn't know what Colin Kaepernick is protesting
Exactly,
about. Okay,
exactly.
So you also don't know what he's protesting about. So you don't know why the Seahawks are doing it.
All the Seahawks did was come out arm in arm.
I would have asked why they came out arm in arm.
See? Now, Colin Kaepernick did what he did and told you why he did it, and you're still frustrated.
The frustration was, and I think you'll understand this because you had Nate Boyer on last week and had a great discussion with Nate, and he's been tremendous.
Yes.
Colin's stance has evolved. You would have to.
He told you. He when they asked him, they said, Colin, why were you seating during the national anthem? He said there are injustices going on with the police brutality. He said that. Now, he had a bigger press conference after the second time.
Yes, he did.
But he did explain the first time around why he did what he did. So it was clear to me. I think we changed the narrative. Well, he's protesting the flag. He's disrespecting the veterans. He's disrespecting our military. Then it got to the point where he's protesting, and we're not even talking. See, you still haven't mentioned the issues. You're upset because you were frustrated because your dad was a veteran.
That's right. That's right.
But you hadn't talked about the issues.
I understand that because, again, that's the lens that I view things for. So I immediately, when he didn't stand for the flag and the anthem until he came out and talked about what he did, I was immediately frustrated and disappointed and felt like that was a disrespectful act towards my father. Then I heard what he said, and then his stance has evolved. I did not like the socks that he wore at practice. I did not like that. his stance has evolved and softened, and I think he's done a remarkable job. I give him a lot of credit for what he's done because he has started a discussion that has led to now Seattle and Kansas City and Dallas and things where it's easier for me to get behind it. Now, Shannon, the problem that I saw with Kaepernick is that immediately it wasn't about the issues until he brought them forth. The softer nature of what Seattle did and the more together nature of what Seattle did, for me, put me at a point where I was like, I want to hear what they have to say. I want to hear why their stance is the way it is. I want to hear what has brought them together. And that's why I have the thoughts that I do.
But even when the police brutality that we see, even when they've done wrong, we see the police stand arm in arm in unity. They're unified.
They are.
But you're not frustrated with that. You were frustrated by Colin Kaepernick because you thought it was, see, the military, and I commend your father for what he did and the service and the men and women provide, but the military don't own the flag, Joel.
No, they don't.
They don't own it. Somehow, some way down the line, we think that only the military can represent the flag, and the flag represents all things to everybody. And I said this to me and Skip, we talked about this before.
Not necessarily, and I don't want to interrupt, but the flag means something very
to you,
particular to me. And I started this whole discussion by saying we view this entire situations through very individual lenses. That's the lens with which I viewed it because that's what the flag means to me.
You also view it through the lens of being a white male
100%
that has never had to have an amendment, an act, or a constitution amended for your civil rights. You've never had 100%. A white male had to have fair housing. You've never had to say, you know what, you can't go, Joel Klatt, to this place because you're a white male. You've never had that. So unless you walked them out, unless you've experienced it, like in the life. See, everybody talks about, well, Shannon, you got it so good. But I tell you what, I bet you Jerry Jones would not trade places with a 75-year-old black man in Chicago or Detroit. I bet Joel Klatt would not trade places with a 30-year-old black guy from Chicago or Watts. I bet he wouldn't do that. You know why? Because it's great to know that I'm white and I'm a male in America and I'm viewed totally different than any other demographic in America. That's fact. That's not fiction. That's not a prism. That is factual.
Understandable. I'm going to go back to this point. It's much easier for that discussion to get started for me when I see the nature of what Seattle did rather than what Colin Kaepernick did. He has a right. I stand up for that right. My father fought for that right, for him to do what he did, and that's what my father has told me when I talked to him about it 3 days ago. I had to get over that hump because of my background, and I can't do anything about who I am, or where I come from, or how I view things. Now, this has made me think, which is what it should every American out there. My stance continues to be, as it's evolved, and as I've seen Colin Kaepernick's protest evolve, and I've seen what Seattle did, it makes me much more apt to sit there and reflect and say, what is it about my life that makes me view things the certain way? When he first did it, I can't help the fact that the immediate reaction was frustration. And I can't help that.
One more thing. Let me ask you this. Now that you see what was going on, how many times did you and your friends have a conversation before Colin Kaepernick did what he did about police brutality, about the inequities in America? How many times do you and your friends sitting around, you're playing golf, and you say, you know what? That's wrong what happened in New York. That's wrong what's happened in Chicago. That's wrong what happened in Missouri. How many times? No protests, no unity. How many times did y'all have that conversation?
I cheated because my partner is Gus Johnson. And I've talked with these issues with Gus Johnson last year when we became booth mates. So I have had that discussion, but with My friends that are not African American,
yes.
that conversation never happened.
And see,
before,
that's,
before
and that's
now.
the point Skip and I were trying to make. And that's what protests in America, because see, America was built on dissent.
Totally understand.
We got tired of England. We didn't want to, they didn't want to be a part of that anymore. They didn't want a monarchy. They didn't want a king and a queen. And they didn't want to pay. That's why they dumped all that tea in the Boston Harbor. And that's what Skip and I has been trying to say. They keep saying, well, we could have this conversation another way. No, you won't. You think that it will just go away. It's kind of like a toothache. If you have a toothache and the nerve is exposed, now you could say, you know what, I'm not going to the dentist, I don't care how much, but it will get painful enough. It will force you to take actions. Either you're gonna get it filled or you're gonna get it pulled, but you're gonna get out of that pain. So this is a cavity that's going on, and the issues will force you to address them.
That's why I said I appreciate the evolution of this protest.
Okay.
And I think that for me has been the biggest point of it. The fact that it has gravitated towards other teams and they've done, I thought it was an amazing gesture what Seattle did. I really did. And I think that's the type of conversation that needs to take place, is one born out of unity, you know, and the ability to try to understand. But Shannon, I can't help the fact that thinking about my father immediately when I saw someone sitting for the anthem is my first reaction.
We got it. So I've had that conversation on television dozens of times over the last 2 years, just to defend myself on that point.
Oh yeah, I know you have.
So,
yeah,
because
because you want our chief supporters.
Okay, you got it. So just I get where Joel's coming from, because millions of people have died for that flag. Some of them black and a whole lot of them white, for our freedom. So I know you respect and appreciate that.
Absolutely.
But I do. Your deepest point is, what caused the conversation to detonate in this country? I saw at the ESPYs, I saw Dwayne Wade and LeBron and Carmelo and who else? Chris Paul stand together and try to make this statement, right? We need to bring awareness to a staggering problem that is facing our country right now. White cops killing unarmed black men with no punishment. It happens again and again, over here, over here, over here. What is going on here? Nothing really came of that display on national TV. Everything came from what Colin Kaepernick did. So I appreciate, I cringed when I first saw it, because I'm one nation under God. And I don't want to see that, because I'm a white guy looking at it through my prism. But then when he spoke about it, my ears and heart opened wide. So here we go, and here we've come, and you're exactly right about it. If they lock arms in unity, and that's the first display, I have no idea what's going on with that, and my ears are probably closed to that at that point. So I get what...
And what they did, Skip, is that everybody understood that the violence was, but it was, no one was uncomfortable.
Right, no one was uncomfortable.
It was at the ESPYs, they're dressed in black and they're reading off the prompter.
No.
Protest, in order to be effective, it must make people uncomfortable, and it must come with consequences. You must be willing, because if you don't stand to lose anything, Joe, what are you doing it for?
I mean, this is the nature of athletics, right? Every coach that we ever played for said, in order to get better, you got to get out of your comfort zone.
Yes.
And clearly that's what this conversation has done for millions of Americans, and certainly myself. But like I said, the way that this has evolved and gone, I appreciate it. And I desperately want to learn the facts better than what I know them. Because again, all I can view things is through my own lens until now, right? Until you get out of your comfort zone.
But the important thing that you're doing is being open and listening to the conversation.
Well, that's important for all of us, right?
Well,
I mean,
a lot of people are
on both
getting
sides,
caught up
to be open to trying to view things through the other's lens.
Because you started viewing it one way, and now you're open, and you say, you know what? Okay, this is what I thought, but I'm willing to open my mind to see what's going on and have a different perspective. Bruh, I appreciate that.
Go.
Good looking.
Thanks so much, Joel. Thanks so much for joining us.